Alright, hello, welcome. My name is Shaina. I'm an astrologer, and today I'm doing a continuation of my favorite series, my aspect series. I laugh every time I say it because it's an insane goal, but I'm a Capricorn and we're very ambitious and very motivated, and we do follow through, so I'm going to try my best. I am doing a series about every single aspect in astrology, a dedicated video. If you're interested in what other aspects I've already done, the link to the playlist will be right here in the cards. And if you didn't know, I'm doing these by request only. So if you want me to talk about an aspect that you have, or you're just interested in an aspect, you can request it in the comments. You can request it in any comments at any video, honestly. And basically how I pick each month now, because I've gotten quite a bunch of requests, is every month I check the most requested aspects, and then in my community tab here on YouTube, I make a poll of the most requested aspects for that month, and then you guys vote on which aspect you would like to see. So here is the results of this month's poll. Now, if it has changed, this is what it was at when I made this video today, right now. So, you know, it is what it is. And as you can see, Moon, Trine, Sextile, Uranus went out pretty obviously, which makes sense because it was honestly by far the most requested aspect I've gotten on this channel. So I was really actually hoping it would win, and I'm glad to see it did. So if you want to vote on my next aspect video, just check my community tab every now and then, see if there's a poll open, and vote on there. So before we get any further into this video, let me just get the advertising out of the way. If you're like, yes, this is just one piece of the puzzle that is my birth chart, there's so much more stuff going on, don't worry, I got you. I sell birth chart readings on my website, shainaemily.com. I also sell tarot readings, I sell little healing sessions, I sell a bunch of stuff over on my website. I don't know, every single one of you have been just so beyond lovely to talk to, so I just appreciate you guys purchasing the readings from me. It's just been really nice to connect on a genuinely like individual basis. And then I also have been super active on my TikTok at shaina.emily. There's a lot more, you know, short form blippy content that I guess is actually a lot more controversial than I thought. I feel like I say a lot more controversial things on this YouTube channel, but everybody seems to go crazy over on my TikTok, and it makes me laugh. And I also have a personal Instagram. Okay, I have to point this out. So I am dressing, as much, you know, as long as there's a theme to the video, I'm dressing for the video. It might not look like I am, but that's because the point of this shirt is actually at the bottom of the shirt. You just can't see it because it's out of frame. My shirt says, "Relax, we're all fucking crazy here. It's not a competition." Because that's very Moon, Trine, Sextile, Uranus vibes. And also I was thinking about like, why is this the most requested aspect? It's not like a super duper talked about hot topic aspect in the astrology community, but I honestly just think it's because this would really attract somebody to something like astrology. So that does make sense. Now I am doing the square and opposition aspects separately just because they are so different. However, I am combining the sextile and trine aspect into one video just because they're way too close to make two separate videos about. There's kind of no point. If you need to know more about aspects and what the main difference between the sextile and the trine are, you can watch my aspects in astrology video. I reference this video all the time, so I would honestly really recommend watching it. Basically, a sextile is just like a softer version of the trine. The trine is just like, oh, this is so naturally harmonious, it just goes together no matter what. And the sextile is like, oh, it works out. It's not like my main talent, but it is like a sub-talent, a sub-hobby of mine, even though it's a little bit more controllable. Although with Moon, sextile, Uranus, I mean, it honestly is quite obvious and quite noticeable. The people that I've known, or even like when I looked up celebrities with Moon sextile Uranus, I mean, it's a pretty evident that they have this aspect if you ask me. So I would say like, it kind of always plays out like the trine, if I'm being honest with you with this one. That's not always true, but that's just my personal opinion. Lastly, if you don't know what the Moon is, if you don't know what Uranus is, I now have two full videos about the inner planets in astrology and the outer planets in astrology. So I will link my astrology course up here, and in that you will find the inner planets and the outer planets if you do not know what the Moon represents in astrology, and if you do not know what Uranus represents in astrology. So now that you're all caught up and you know what these two planets mean, let's just jump right into the dang thing. So the first topic I will of course cover is emotions, your emotional life. Why? Because this is a Moon aspect, so of course it primarily focuses on how you deal with your emotions. I think that Moon sextile and Moon trine Uranus people, the main thing is that they love chaos. They really like emotional chaos, and they actually thrive off of it. If things are too stagnant in their life, if things are too samey, if things are too just like monotonous, or even if things get too comfortable, they kind of can't handle it, and that can sometimes make them go crazy. They need a lot of changeability in their emotional life. They need a lot of ups and downs. They need some kind of wild card entering their life at all all times, and they can take somewhat erratic actions just to kind of stir the pot, just so that their life is more interesting and things keep on coming and they keep on learning. Now, this is a positive aspect. So this is not like they do stuff that will hurt other people, or that will, like, it's not mean, it's not like a rude, condescending aspect, it's not an evil kind of aspect whatsoever. It's just stagnancy. They can just need to shake things up. For, like, it can be something as simple as, I just need to move, or yeah, I really like my university that I'm going to, but I just feel like I'm over it and I'm past it and I need to change universities, or I need to change my major, or, oh yes, I've done this career for a really long time and I'm really successful at it, but it's kind of boring. I need to adjust it. Or even just like, you know, I have not gone out for like a year and I'm really bored. So now I've decided to go through a phase of like going out on the town and like having fun a bunch, even though that's like not something I normally do. Like, their actions will really surprise you, and it's just because they really get these like really surprising emotional insights and like these emotional wants and needs just like plopped into their head out of nowhere that they like really want to go after and see where it takes them. Again, this isn't a negative thing. This is not like a Scorpio, Pluto energy of like going down that rabbit hole. It's more just fun, interesting, and lighthearted. Maybe they'll pick up a new hobby. Maybe they'll pick up a new philosophy. Maybe they'll just kind of, you know, have a new friend that is unlike all their other friends, just for, you know, getting a different perspective. This is not a negative thing. This is actually something that keeps them having a really open mind, open heart, and open spirit. I think it's a genuinely, absolutely lovely aspect. Now, not everybody's gonna think that, because a lot of people will see it as very chaotic and hard to pin down, and even a little bit emotionally distant at times. So people that are too maybe water sign oriented, even if they have like a very watery moon, might see somebody with a moon sextile or trine Uranus as just extremely distant and aloof and not detached, and like, how could you just like switch things up like that and go from one person to another, or have a bunch of like weird friends that like don't fit into each other? But that's what moon trine and sextile Uranus really enjoys. It's like life is eclectic, and so they want to experience all of it. This is definitely an aspect that their emotions can be all over the place. They can go from being happy to being sad to being excited to being scared. I once knew somebody that was going off to college, and they told me, they were like, yeah, it's like I'm fine most of the time, like right now I'm fine and I don't really care, but for some reason I was like cleaning my kitchen and all of a sudden I had to stop and just burst into tears for a few minutes, but then after I burst into tears that was fine, and I thought, eh, fuck this place, I'm excited to leave, you know? And that's kind of how their emotions are, you know? It comes at not horrible times. Again, this is a trine and a sextile, so, you know, it comes at random times. Like, I don't know why cleaning my kitchen would make me be sad to leave. That's kind of odd. You'd think it'd be something more sentimental. Sometimes things just pop in your head, and it's not like a negative thing. It's not a completely horrible thing, but it can be a little bit off-putting to other people because your emotional responses are a little bit abnormal to most people's, you know? When you're experiencing sadness, might not be the normal place, time, or way that other people experience and go through sadness. Your sadness might even look a lot different than most people's sadness. A big thing with moon trine and sextile Uranus is that your emotional life just looks very different from the outside. People might not understand it, people might misinterpret it a lot, but instead of that making you feel like really bad about yourself, I mean, sometimes it can, depending on what other Uranus aspects that come up. I think in the best of ways, it can make you feel special. It makes you feel, in my head, I guess, because I have such a good view of this aspect, if I'm being honest, I tend to like Uranus. I tend to like those characteristics. I am a Capricorn moon, so I do well with those more Aquarian moon types as well. But I tend to just see it as somebody, it's like moon trine sextile Uranus, I feel like having those odd emotional responses can just like remind you that you're human, and not all humans go through things in the same way. Water sign emotions can be very expected, and it can feel, and in that way it can feel a little bit inhumane because it's almost like they go through the steps that you'd expect. Whereas Uranian moon types don't go through those normal steps. Something that would affect somebody on a normal occasion does not affect you, but something that wouldn't really affect somebody does affect you because you have very individualized emotional responses. And I think that's so special, and I think that's so beautiful, and I think that's something to be celebrated. Although this does outcast you a lot from normal people, it does even maybe make it hard sometimes to watch movies, you know, or like TV shows, because you may be like, why are they experiencing that right now? Or like, I don't feel that way when this happens, you know, very like foreign feelings when you're watching movies. Like, who are people? What are people? It can have that, you know, feeling of looking at everybody else through like this glass wall. But instead of it being something that was like, your parents like hated you for and scolded you for, it was actually something that your parents liked and celebrated and nurtured and introduced to you. I'd say for the most part, you don't dwell on situations as long as most people do, but every now and then you might get that plop of emotional insight and you may go, oh, that situation that happened 3 years ago, I didn't understand what was going on, and now suddenly I see it through different eyes. You know, that can definitely happen. Also, moon, trine, or sextile Uranus does have problems with people that are overly serious, that do, you know, live in the past too much, or even that live in the future too much. This is a very like present kind of emotional state. Just because your emotions can be very erratic, it would be hard to live in any other way. Now, it's not like a Taurus moon where you're so present in your emotional state because you're so sad in it and stuck, but rather just because your emotions can come and go so quickly that it's hard to be anywhere else other than the present moment. If anything, I would say these are more future trippers. People can be very confusing to you, especially other people's emotions can be just extremely foreign to you. Like how everybody feels about your emotional expressions, you're like, well, you think I understand yours? You think normal human expressions make sense to me? Because they don't. All right, intuition. This is a strong emotional intuition. You may be keen to kind of like odd insights for sure. You can kind of know things before being told them. And you may get the impulse to do something crazy or something weird or some kind of weird way to console somebody, but because it is trine and sextile, it usually actually works out for the best in the end. Same with these crazy impulses. If you get this weird emotional impulse, like all of a sudden I have to run away, all of a sudden I can't be in this situation anymore, because it is trine or sextile, they probably aren't there to lead you astray. It's probably there to get you out of a situation that is no longer serving you, no longer benefiting you, or even just to put you in a situation that is far more positive and you'll learn and grow more from. So this is definitely an aspect that I would recommend following those intuitions, following those impulses, listening to those insights, because it can really lead you the right way. Now, those are random insights. Now, this is not something that you can control as much, because even though this is a positive aspect, it is still an outer planet. It is still considered a little bit more of a malefic. I call it like a semi-malefic because I just do think there's a lot of good to Uranus to call it a malefic. Now, let's go to the root of this situation. Okay, we've talked about some of the ways that you are emotionally and all that kind of stuff, but now let's talk about what it was like being raised with this aspect, what your mother was like, because the moon does represent the mother in astrology, but it also represents the nurturing that you received, the kind of home or family life you grew up in, all that kind of stuff. Now, obviously, you know, you have more aspects than just this one, but we're just talking purely about this aspect. So with moon sextile trine Uranus, your mother was obviously very offbeat, very different, very unique. You might have also had a mom that wasn't your mom. I think this is a very common aspect of somebody that was adopted into a family. However, I would guess because it's a trine or a sextile, that you wound up really liking your adopted family. Like, yes, you were different to them, but you really liked them and you felt like it was for the best. Even if there is still a little bit of a disconnect, I don't think it's that negative for you. You might feel a little bit like the odd one out, but it was never a bad thing. It was something that your mother or your family enjoyed and embraced. Or even like you could have been raised by a grandparent, by an aunt. You could have been raised in a more communal system. That's a big thing with moon trine sextile Uranus. Like, it could have even had a mom that took in a bunch of kids. Like, maybe you weren't adopted, but your mom took in a bunch of kids from her extended family, or she was like a community mom, that she was like the, you know, if you've ever watched the, it's called like The Amazing and Fantastical Whites. I'm getting the name wrong. I'll put the cover right here. But the head matriarch of the White family, you should absolutely watch this documentary. It's a fantastic and hilarious documentary. But the matriarch of that family, I can't remember her name. I haven't watched it for a while. She is somebody that would totally give me a vibe of a moon trine or sextile Uranus mother, because she was really weird. She's a really weird mom, but they all love her to absolute bits. Everybody has such good things to say about her, and she was really like the mom for a lot of the community that didn't have a mother. This might also be you as well. You might be the, if you have kids, you might be the erratic mom a little bit. You might be the mom that's all over the place, that does things a little bit quirky, that does things a little bit more different, that, you know, teaches their kids astrology when they're younger, or gives them like eclectic interests, interests, has a unique religion, lives in a weird situation, growing up in a country that isn't your home country. But all of this is extremely positive for the most part. I mean, yes, there's always that odd one out kind of lonely isolation things that comes with it, but it probably taught you to be a stronger, more unique, individualized personality that doesn't just go and blend in, but is comfortable and solid in themselves, which I think is a great way to be. If one of my kids had this aspect, I would be actually beyond happy. Now, there is the one thing that I will say is that this does kind of show that your mother had inconsistent emotions. She was a little bit hard to guess how she'd be feeling and when she'd be feeling it, and it was always kind of like a guessing game. You know, am I getting her on the good side or the bad side? I'm not really sure. But for the most part, you might have realized that you got used to that chaos, you got used to being on your toes, and if you were with somebody that was like, you know, super steady, very Taurus, or even very Capricorn, and just very like kind of neutral all the time, you might find that boring. Like, you might find her like erratic nature a little bit entertaining sometimes, because it's always like, oh, what's gonna happen today? And sometimes it cannot be the best thing that happens today. But also with Moon trine Uranus, you know, I just gotta wait it out 24 hours and she'll be in a different mood, so it's not that bad, you know, kind of situation. This can kind of show a little bit of a bipolar mother, or a mother with some mental health issues. But I would say, because it's a positive aspect though, I would see this more as a mother that kind of honed that energy for good. Like, maybe she did have erratic emotions, but she channeled that into her art or her creativity, or, you know, or something along those lines. You know, this is definitely an aspect of a mother that's like, everybody pack up, we're moving next week, and you're like, oh hell yeah, let's get out of this place. You know, totally also like military family vibes a little bit, having to move from place to place kind of. Also, your mother might be a little bit inconsistent in her presence in your life, but this created a very independent personality in you. So because of that, you're not used to being, unless you have other aspects that say differently, with just this aspect purely, you're not really used to being baby. This wasn't a mother that super like duper babied you and like protected you from the world. She very much exposed you to the world. You might have even like watched maybe semi-inappropriate movies at an age that you shouldn't have, but she was like, it's Halloween, so we're watching a scary movie. Like, that's very Moon trine sextile Uranus. Also a mother that maybe she worked a lot, and so you were home alone a lot, but you might have liked, I would guess you liked that independence. You enjoyed being home alone. You enjoyed, you know, having her sometimes, but not all the time kind of situation. She might have also been a little bit more emotionally distant, but again, this wasn't the worst thing. This was probably actually agreeable to the kind of person you were. Maybe sometimes you do wish you had a little bit of a deeper, more sensitive, comfortable relationship with your mother. That could definitely be true, but you also understood them because of this. You probably were like, I understand why you're emotionally distant. I get it. I can read you because of it. I understand where it's coming from. There might have been that little bit of agreeability between the two of you. This is definitely an aspect where the mom can be a little bit more of a best friend than an actual mom, which isn't always the best. If you have other aspects like maybe Saturn talking to your moon, then she was also an authority figure while simultaneously being your best friend. But if this is like a Gemini moon, trine Uranus and Aquarius, she probably could have used to be a little bit more of a reprimanding kind of mom. She probably could have used to be a little bit more of an authority in your life rather than just a best friend. But again, she still is a best friend. This is still somebody that you really get along with, you really enjoy talking to, you really enjoy having really unique, weird, big-minded conversations with. Your parents might have also been quite open with you about philosophy, about political stuff, about, you know, maybe you always had the news on as a child and you guys were all on the same side and you guys all rallied together, you know, because you guys were all very political and you got into somewhat, you know, politically heated battles, but it was for the most part in good fun, and it like really stimulated your brain, stimulated your mind. This might have been a mother who had a very open door policy as far as religion goes. Like, I want you to experience all the religions and I want you to pick one, or, you know, this is my religion and it's a little bit offbeat, but it's very open-ended, or this is my religion, but I kind of make it my own, even though I'm a traditional religion, I tailor it to me kind of situation, and you kind of got that influence as well. If you were raised religious, which this usually is a more science-minded aspect, but if you were raised religious, it wasn't as stark as how most people were raised religious in a religion sense. It was much more open-ended, or much more spiritual, or much more like thinky, science-y kind of situation, which is why it lends itself so much to things like astrology. maybe, you know, she might have dabbled a little bit in her free time. Definitely, your mom can have a little bit of a savior complex kind of thing, you know, like I donate to this situation, or, you know, oh, we bring in a lot of family members, all that kind of stuff. Okay, pregnancy. So potentially your mom had like a little bit of a surprise pregnancy with you. Maybe you were a little bit unexpected. However, with it in the trine or sextile, you were very much welcomed, and even though you might have been a little bit of a surprise, it was a very warm welcoming, and she probably, and your mother probably says like, but it was exactly what should have happened, even though I didn't expect it, or it was in a very non-traditional way. This could also happen with you with a moon trine sextile Uranus. You might have an unexpected pregnancy, but it might have been like just the blessing that you didn't realize that you wanted and needed. And the pregnancy probably was chaotic, probably was a little bit all over the place. There might have not been a lot of stagnancy, but it was honestly for the best, and because of that, you have such an open spirit. This could also indicate being a surrogate mother, having a surrogate mother, using in vitro, just, you know, adopting, as I mentioned, just having, you know, being an egg donor, sperm donor, you know, all that kind of stuff very much heavily goes into moon trine Uranus or sextile Uranus. All that kind of more untraditional fertility stuff goes into moon trine Uranus. Also, this is kind of off to the side. If you're a female with this, you might have a little bit of an odd cycle. Like, you never know when your period's gonna come. It kind of surprises you. You never go like the straight 28 days or whatever. It's kind of all over the place. It's not bad, but it's not like super harmful, because again, this is a trine or a sextile, but this is definitely a possibility for sure. And maybe around the time when you're PMSing is when you like extra feel like you're your moon trine or sextile Uranus. Maybe you're even somebody that like doesn't want to have kids. That's very, very real with moon trine or sextile Uranus, but not in a negative way. Just it's not who you are. You're just a very independent person, and maybe you get your tubes tied, or you get a vasectomy or something like that. That's all just very common with moon trine sextile Uranus. Now, okay, the influence that moon trine or sextile Uranus can have. These are people that are really just naturally, intuitively in tune with the trends. They just kind of know by accident what's going to be popular before it's popular. This probably has a lot to do with like very emotional things like music. It could even have to do with fashion. It could have to do with the arts in some way, because that's a very moon-like sphere. You know, you just kind of know what's going to be popular when it's going to be popular. Maybe even with like interior design. This could totally be like an eclectic interior designer of some sort, for sure. Your room has probably always been very uniquely decorated. There's just really a natural sparkle and excitement to your personality. This is very much a manic pixie dream girl kind of energy. Now, I will say, because this is trine or sextile the moon, we're not talking about the ascendant. This might not be somebody that physically looks super alternative. It can be if you have a lot of Uranus aspects to your ascendant or whatever it might be. But if we're just talking about moon, trine, or sextile Uranus purely, I would say this is more of a person that maybe doesn't dress that strange or look that strange, but who they are is really and purely alternative. Kind of that concept of like, I might not look alternative, but I'm kind of more alternative than most people on the inside. I might look just like a typical brown-haired girl or guy or whatever, but what I've actually been through in life and how my life's led me, people would be shocked that I speak multiple languages, you know? People would be shocked that I've lived at all these corners. People would be shocked that I've, you know, been through such weird occurrences, or that I'm adopted, or that I just am interested in really weird eclectic things. People just wouldn't really know that by looking at me, but I am much more alternative than the people that sometimes even look alternative. That's like a real big theme with this aspect. You really encourage others to be themselves, because you are going to be yourself no matter what. There's nothing else that you could do. You couldn't turn off you if you tried. This is not an aspect that can try to like conform. It's always going to come out one way or another that you're a little bit of a weirdo. In a good way though. And you really want to be in a friend group that's really eclectic, where everybody encourages each other to be themselves. This might even point to being in like weird groups, weird clubs, you know, be into really strange after school activities, be interested in offbeat hobbies, being a skater, being a pot smoker, being into the occult stuff, being into weird artists or underground scenes of music, liking something before it was popular. All that kind of stuff is super moon, trine, sextile, Uranus. You can be very influential, especially if one of these placements is in the 11th house, the 10th house, the 9th house, even the 5th house, even the 7th house. You can be influential among your friends. You just will find that people might even try to copy you. People might try to subtly be you without trying to say that they are. You just might be just in general very influential, or you just might, you know, kind of accidentally be ahead of the trends. You surround yourself with a very diverse group of friends, family, and coworkers. Your job is probably very odd and offbeat too. Now, where this does have some trouble is long-term relationships, committed relationships. You can do long-distance relationships way better than most people. You can even do long-term friendships way better than most people. You can keep relationships with people that most people wouldn't even be able to be around or keep that relationship with. But where I think you would have the most trouble, obviously this depends on your Venus and more stuff, but there might be some struggles with keeping a long-term relationship, like romantically, because you can get bored, you can be all over the place. It's not necessarily a cheater aspect in and of itself. It's more of a distant aspect. You might have to end relationships because you grow distant, because you get into the relationship and it's really fun and exciting and you're like super present in your manic pixie dream girl, but then, you know, you realize that this person's just another person, it's kind of boring, and then you distance yourself and detach a little bit, and then it kind of winds up fading away. But you also might really do well with online relationships, or like Tinder, Hinge, you know, even like social media groups, you know, connecting with your favorite social media people, like all that stuff you'll do really well with. You'll be able to foster really unique, weird relationships online, all that kind of stuff. If I haven't emphasized this enough, you are a free spirit. This is the definition of a free spirit, eclectic life person. You're independent, you're the good weird. Even if people have called you the bad weird and isolated you, I don't really think you give a fuck. I think you know that you are the genuinely good weird. I think of like bad weird as like incel energy, and this is not incel energy. Do you know what I'm trying to say? You really have a positive relationship in life with the things that most people will ostracize. And you're really open to new ways of thought and new ways of thinking. Even if you disagree with them, you'll still remain open-minded to them. Now, you might have some God complex stuff with your emotions, and you might get a little bit too, you know, turn up your nose at things, and, oh yeah, Shaina said I'm ahead of the trends. I did find this person before they were cool. But with moonshine Uranus or sextile Uranus, I mean, that can be genuine. You can sometimes isolate some people because you are so different and you don't mean to, but you can sometimes isolate the normies who are genuinely trying to reach out to you and curious and interested. You need personal freedom. That is a big reason why you have trouble with long-term romantic relationships sometimes that are too suffocating, that feel like they overcrowd you, because you need personal freedom more than anything. You were raised with a lot of personal freedom. You grew up with a lot of freedom from your parents. Maybe there weren't many rules in your household, or your parents trusted you or something like that, and you got to do what you wanted when you wanted for the most part. And so you might have some trouble with authority. You might have some trouble with authority that is even in a relationship, that is even a parent, that is even a teacher, that is even a boss. You might have trouble with it, don't want to do it, don't need it, don't have time for it. This is definitely like a van life kind of aspect. Whether you actually are in the van life or not, that's kind of your mentality. Barefoot and van life. And not because you're broke or whatever it might be. I mean, maybe, I mean, moonshine Uranus or sextile Uranus, I could see really not giving a shit about money, but it doesn't necessarily mean that. It just means like you like to be barefoot because you like to connect with the world, and you like to live in a van because you want to see everything, you know? Van life is expensive, okay? Humanitarian. Oh, the trigger word for Uranus. So this is somebody that is a natural humanitarian, but in a much more emotional way. Caring for the underdog, wanting to take care of the mentally ill, especially, wanting to understand the mentally ill, being really interested in psychology from a humanitarian perspective, wanting to better the world from a very humanitarian perspective in the way of caring for people and nurturing people. You want to do good in the world. You can can have this mentality of like wanting to save everybody, which that, you know, can fall into its own traps in itself. However, the great part about this aspect is that you probably treat everybody as equals, regardless of position, regardless of authority, regardless of financial status. Everybody is, when you first upon meeting them, they are an equal. Now, this can fall into trouble when you're meeting somebody who, you know, thinks they have authority over you if they're a boss or something, because you will still treat them as an equal, and that's when things can, you know, you can get in trouble, or things can, you know, get into, you know, what am I trying to say, a confrontation or something like that. But honestly, I'm very much that kind of person too. Like, I really don't think anybody is above anybody in like a status position. Now, I think maybe with Moon trine Uranus, it can be like an intellect. I think if you do judge anybody through like, oh, okay, who's at the status of what, it'd be who's the smartest person, because Uranus is very smart, very naturally witty, very like technologically gifted. So you might be like, everybody is on an even playing field regardless of money, wealth, or power. However, you know, we should listen to the smarter people, and I want to be the smartest person can be very much this aspect, which is where the elitism can come in. Oh, that's hard for me to say, because I'm like, we should just judge people based off of how smart they are, so it makes sense why the people with this aspect like me, because I can be very much that way too. I don't have this aspect, by the way. Definitely with Moon trine Uranus, you want to be at the head of the political fight. You want to be the one leading the political fight, fighting for the underdog, you know, standing up for them, you know, I know how to lead us kind of situation, but very like, I know how to lead us. I would say at its worst, Moon sextile trine Uranus can sometimes exploit others' emotions. Just because you have such a different relationship to your emotions, you might feel like most of the time you control your emotions more than they control you. Now, every now and then there's that Uranian insight of like, I can't help but feel this way, yes, where the rest of the time there's quite a bit of detachment and control over your emotions. And so the fact that when you meet somebody that doesn't have that level of control and awareness, there's a huge level of emotional awareness when it comes to Moon trine Uranus. Almost like, you know, you're a fly on the wall level of emotional awareness. Like you're like out of your body and you can read what's going on kind of emotional awareness from a very detached perspective. And so if you are somebody that has a more nefarious personality or other more nefarious traits to your chart, this can be somebody that can exploit other people's emotions with ease, honestly, and can use people a little bit and play people how they need to. You can even play society in that way too. Like, so this is a big thing with social media. Like, this is how I get myself to be popular, social media wise. This is how I create rage bait. This is how I create this. This is how I make this. But for the most part, this aspect does not in itself mean that you will be this way. But if this aspect is paired, like I said, alongside other things that are more manipulatively minded, this aspect can be a great helper in being manipulative in that way. Does that make sense? Especially because there's just so much influence that can come with this aspect, especially like I said, online or in a greater community. You can use people as pawns to get them how you want. Like, this aspect can definitely be somebody, you know, cult leader vibes for sure. You know, I am great emotionally. Here is how I control my emotions. These are my grand emotional insights, and let me impart them onto the people. Because you just feel so different to everyone else, and it can feel like you're not a part of the human population. It can even feel like you're not a human being sometimes, that you are more of a robot, or that you are more of a, you know, I don't know what to call it, like programmed figure than you are a human. And I don't mean this in a bad way, and I don't mean this to like, you know, try to like desensitize you guys, or, you know, I'm not trying to say this in a negative thing, but I'm saying this from a more I feel like you will relate sometimes to that feeling. It wouldn't surprise me if people that are on the autistic spectrum have this aspect. That wouldn't surprise me at all. And being somebody on the autism spectrum, I definitely feel like sometimes I am like a pre-programmed programmed figure more than I am a human, and that free will doesn't really exist. I do sometimes feel that way. I'm not saying that you do feel that way, but I'm just like relating here, you know. All right, and the last little topic that we will discuss today with Moon trine sextile Uranus is all about your interests, your hobbies, your, you know, activities, all that kind of stuff. They're very eclectic, very interesting. I've kind of touched on this already, but you're just extremely curious and you can go down a lot of rabbit holes. This can even be somebody with a high IQ, or at least can, you know, have a high IQ in certain subjects. This aspect does have a natural affinity towards technology, computer science, computer programming, social media, anything online or of the technological age, new advancements, all that kind of stuff. You just have a natural knack and understanding for. Definitely Moon trine Uranus or Moon sextile Uranus needs to find their niche. There's a niche that you can kind of tap into, that you can be the head of that niche and be the most popular person in that niche. However, you can really get quickly bored by things and feel like you've already learned things very quickly and you've already taken to it very quickly. And you can feel like, oh, that's above my emotional intelligence level. I don't have time for that. This could even be a psychologist friend, or even maybe you are interested in psychology, sociology, all that kind of stuff. You might even be somebody that likes animals more than you do people. I could totally see that being a thing with this aspect. Your ideal career has to do with plenty of freedom, potentially self-employed, or at least self-regulated or somehow independent. Working remote is definitely something you'd really enjoy, or traveling for your job is something that you'd really enjoy and benefit from. A job that just is the opposite of stagnant and really challenges you mentally. This is not necessarily a religious placement in and of itself, but it is extremely interested in different kinds of thought, different forms of thought, philosophy, and psychology, as I've mentioned. This is an aspect that can have some trouble with the more mundane things of life, you know, cooking, cleaning, if it's just doing the same cooking, the same cleaning every day. If they are a cook, they want to create different meals or something unique all the time. There needs to be something new constantly. This can be a very demanding aspect because it really cannot handle the mundane much at all. All right, so that is my explanation of Moon sextile or trine Uranus. I hope that this resonated. I hope that you enjoyed this video. And if you have any more insights, I'm sure you do. You have very unique insights as you are a Moon sextile or trine Uranus kind of person. Please leave them down below. I love learning from you guys. I always read all your comments and appreciate them greatly. But yes, again, I sell full-length birth chart readings on my website, shainaemily.com. I also have a TikTok where I've been posting extremely frequently, but that is at shaina.emily. And I also have a personal Instagram. All right, thank you so much for watching, guys. Hope you're enjoying this aspect series. Don't forget to leave your request of an aspect you'd like to see in an upcoming video down below. Thank you so much for watching. Bye.